How much change from the offense will we see with the new dimensions at Kauffman Stadium? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into a Monday edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcasting network out there. I am your host, Jack Johnson. And if you're looking for the easiest way to follow me, you can do so on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You also can listen to this wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey. We're also on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. We do want to tell you that today's title sponsor is FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. And we do have some exciting news that's going to be happening on this podcast over the next couple of weeks. This Sunday, I'll be headed down to Surprise, Arizona for the third consecutive year. We'll have tons of player interview, tons of video. Follow me on Twitter for that. We'll also have episodes Monday through Friday. That's for you new listeners out there not very familiar with the format that we have. We're Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. That's whether we're here in this podcasting studio or we're going to be down in Surprise doing it from probably one of those conference rooms in the hotel. But even with the poor background setting, we'll have tons of content to go over because now that the Super Bowl is over, it is officially baseball season. I want to go back to last week and an article that was posted from MLB.com last week in the new dimensions of Kauffman Stadium. And this was something that I was very happy to see from a reporter out there. It didn't matter who it was going to be, just somebody that had the data in time to go do the research over the last couple of years of with the fences coming in, how many of those outs would have been home runs, how many outs that the Royals pitching staff had would have carried over the fence. And Mike Petrelio, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I apologize if not, but a great longtime reporter over at MLB.com. He did the research. He did the data over the last 4 years and why the Royals decided this year to move the fences in. Now, this was originally pushed back from John Sherman at Royals Rally, where the question was asked, is this a test for the new stadium, bringing the fences in? And it wasn't much about that. It was more so about capitalizing the last couple of years of Kauffman Stadium and how you can tailor this ballpark to this offense. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. JJ Picollo had brought up that for young hitters, he wants them to be rewarded when they hit a ball well. And there were some people commenting on this podcast and more so defending the pitching staff of, well, I wouldn't be too happy if I'm a pitcher. I've made my success pitching in a ballpark like this. I will say that over the course of 162, there really is a small percentage of these home runs that, were outs at Kauffman Stadium or outs that are now going to be turned into home runs. It's a small percentage. It's not as wide as you may think it is. Like, this gap isn't tremendously wide. It's not that there's 100 extra home runs this year, and now the Royals will go from a 25th ranked offense in power and slug to top 5. It's not that. They are going to be making a significant jump, but also in the pitching side of things, they're not going to go from one of the better pitching staffs to bottom 5 because the fence has moved in a little bit. And so this data that was put out there covered the last 4 seasons, I want to say it was. And in 2021, the Royals offense would have had 21 extra homers. So all of those fly ball, those deep outs at Kauffman Stadium, those would have been home runs with the new dimensions. Opponents would have had 22 extra home runs. So the Royals would have given up one more home run than they had gotten offensively. 2022, otherwise known as Salvador Perez's 48 home run season, the Royals would have had 24 extra, 22 hit by the opponents. 2023, the Royals would have had 30 extra home runs, and their opponents would have had 35. Now, this is the difference, and this is why I think the decision was to do it this year. 2024, the Royals would have had 25 extra home runs, and the pitching staff would have only given up 18. Last year, the Royals offense would have had 24 extra home runs and only 10 extra home runs given up by the pitching staff. So 34 additional home runs last year, combining the Royals offense and the opposing hitters. That is quite a substantial jump. That's 14 more home runs than they were giving up. And I went and just did the simple math of, well, where would that have put them last year in terms of home runs? Well, they would have jumped from 26th to 16th. You're going from bottom 5 in baseball to middle of the pack. And the teams they were surrounded by, I think you had Boston that was around 180 to 183, and the Royals fell into that 180 category. They clearly have confidence. Daniel Mack, who runs the analytics department for the Royals, very bright individual, he looked at this data and said, we're not giving up a ton of home runs anyway when they're dying at the warning track, I should say. Like the balls that are dying at the warning track, those are not really coming off the bat of the opposing hitters. It's been hampering our offense. Our guys are the ones that are hitting these deep fly balls to left center, to right center, and they're just dying right there on the track. And you've got guys like Jack Caglione. You've got guys like Carter Jensen. You're going to be bringing in Isaac Collins to this offense. And not that Isaac Collins is much of a power hitter, but you have younger bats, guys that have not really fully developed at the big league level. You don't want them altering their swing. You don't want them changing their swing. And for as bad as the offense was last year, I just look at these 24 additional home runs, and I would say, do we feel different about the offense if the dimensions had moved in last year? Now, I'm not saying it would change the perception completely. It still was a below average offense. However, you make that jump from 26th to 16th. How often do we talk about the Royals offense and their inability to put one over the fence, and how it was tough to put together some great games offensively because you needed 3 singles or 4 singles at times to drive in a run, right? You needed multiple hits to move guys around the bases because you just didn't have enough guys that were gapping the ball, hitting one out, hitting one off the fence. They weren't doing that. And when you have a team that can fall somewhere in the middle of the pack, it does just automatically boost your offense. A higher slug is going to give you a better offense. And this is not about turning Kauffman Stadium into a bandbox. It's not that whatsoever. In fact, J.J. Picollo had said it's about turning our ballpark into a neutral ballpark. I will say, so there's no misconception here, the Royals did not have a totally pitcher-friendly ballpark. It was still productive for a lot of offenses. The cavernous outfield gives you more areas to hit the ball. There's more grass out there. There's more green for a ball to drop into. And so that was a positive for hitters everywhere. The batter's eye is very beneficial. It's easier to see the ball out of the hand from the pitcher. Power, though, has always been an issue. And even though they've had great seasons from Salvador Perez and last year Vinny Pasquantino, a 30-plus home run season, it's also giving those guys some advantages. You can turn Vinny and Bobby into a 40 home run type of hitter or 35 home run type of hitter. You can turn Jack Caglione of last year from a 7 to 8 home run hitter into a 15 home run hitter. Now you're hoping it's much more than that this year. It's just going to be a bigger change than maybe some people are realizing. The Royals wouldn't have done this move. They wouldn't have changed the dimensions if they didn't envision the offense really benefiting from this. And it's not to excuse the lack of moves they've made for the offense. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I've been very vocal about them adding another bat. In fact, multiple bats, just so you're not counting on so many guys to be big contributors when either they weren't a big contributor last year or they haven't shown it in a long time. This is where you can get marginally better. And by the end of the year, you're going to see why this decision was made. And I know there's going to be a point in time early on in the year where you get an opposing team coming in and they get a cheapie. They hit a home run that just barely clears the fence, and we're all going to go, well, why'd they move the fences in? That would have been an out last year at Kauffman Stadium. This is about benefiting the offense and trusting that the pitching staff can still keep things under control. You've got a much better pitching staff than you do in offense. And if you really think that your pitching staff is as good as they are, they're top 5, they should be able to handle this with ease. As the numbers were brought up, last 2 years, they've given up an average of 14 extra home runs with these new dimensions. Offensively, you're looking at nearly 25 extra home runs added. So 25 compared to 14, that can be the difference at times in how you view your offense now and what it could be at the end of the year. Even 20 extra home runs, that can jump you a lot of spots in the overall rankings. And we've seen teams do these minor dimension changes, and it's benefited them a lot. I know the Royals had moved the fences in back in the early 2000s. It certainly didn't help their pitching staff. They also didn't have a great pitching staff to begin with. Again, I strongly recommend everybody reads this. Mike Petrello of MLB.com. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Unfortunately, I haven't seen one of his interviews where I could get the name correct, but it's very easy to find it on Twitter. It's a fascinating article, really dives into all that data and why Daniel Mack and the Royals did it. And I'm one of the people that believes this is going to be a pretty drastic change. And even if it's not tremendous for the offense, we're going to notice it, whether it be with the pitchers on the mound or it be the guys at the plate. This is not some small change, though, and maybe it's why they feel confident that a couple of these guys they're counting on can have pretty big seasons offensively, just adding a little extra more power to their overall numbers. Do you think it's going to be a big change for the Royals in 2026 with the fences coming in? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, speaking of this rotation, are we worried that there might be more regression from Seth Lugo in 2026? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating races decided by inches, and hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. So FanDuel is the app to go to where you can play your game. We are back here on Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson. We're now the #1 sports podcasting network out there. Before our Seth Lugo segment, I want to tell you about the Everydayer Club. We're trying to grow this each and every day. You've heard us talk about it on every single episode over the last month or so. So easy to sign up, guys. You just scroll below on this video or wherever you're listening to. It could be the podcasting platforms. And if you sign up by clicking on that URL link, it's very affordable. You'll get a Discord channel access, which is basically just a giant group message for everybody to join. I'll try to be as active as possible in there, but it's really just a space for people to talk Royals baseball, sound off in the comments and meet new friends over there. But it's not just this Discord server access. You also can get ad-free Locked On Royals episodes that are compatible with those podcasting platforms. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you're listening on Spotify, Amazon Music, all of those places, you can get ad-free Locked On Royals episodes if you decide to sign up. Again, incredibly easy to do so. Scroll down below. I've got the URL link right there, and you can sign up before we get to spring training. And when we're down there in spring training, I'll try to be as active as possible, as I was saying earlier. Seth Lugo is somebody that the Royals aren't necessarily counting on to be a massive piece of the rotation. He just can't be as poor as he was late in the season last year. And whether that was due to the injury, we saw that after he signed the extension, he was just not the same pitcher anymore. And even though he was great in the first half, and even though 2024 was a tremendous year for him, he nearly had a sub-3 ERA. He throws north of 210 innings if you include the postseason. We can acknowledge that the last 2 years, the back half of his season was poor. It was well below average. He had hit a wall at some point. And in 2024, I go back to Royals Rally, that inning workload had me concerned going into spring training last season. And so when I talked to Seth about this inning workload, I said, when you showed up to spring training last year, did throwing well over 200 innings impact you in any way, shape, or form? Because when he came to Kansas City, he was coming off of 140-ish innings with the Padres, and he was very new into being a full-time starter. Remember that the majority of his career, he was a reliever. He then makes that transition to a starter, and he gets the big money from the Royals after pitching pretty well for San Diego. And then early this offseason, I had said, if they want Seth Lugo to be at his best, they can't overwork him. They can't overwork him in April, May, and June. If he's at 85 pitches and has done his job through 6, I'm all right going to the bullpen there. Because what matters to me is if Seth Lugo is there when they're trying to make a playoff push or not. Then when I talked to Seth, going back to that Royals rally day, I'd asked him about that inning workload. He said, the more I do, the better I feel. So it didn't really impact him as much as I thought it did. I mean, he did run into a wall in 2024, and he wasn't coming off a year where he threw 200-plus innings. Being a reliever, being in his mid-30s, I'm sure that can lead to some fatigue there. But to him, it was more so about fighting mechanics, not sticking with his fastball. I found that interesting, too. He said, I wasn't trusting my fastball as much. It wasn't as effective. We know he throws 10 different pitches. You still have to set guys up. And he wasn't fooling anybody late in the second half. Now, I'm not there yet into saying, well, it was a bad contract, it's going to go down as a terrible contract, because I don't see it that way. The Royals elected to give him that extension, number one, because they believe in Seth Lugo. They see him continuing to be a valuable member of that rotation, a key mentor for the younger pitchers on the staff. And the other part to this is they were not getting the offers they wanted for Seth Lugo. And they were not getting Owen Casey from the Cubs. They were not getting Alcantara from the Cubs. That was never going to happen. The asking price that was originally floated out there was never going to be met, because Seth Lugo was coming up on a free agent year. He was in his mid-30s, and though he was pitching effectively, teams weren't going to overpay for that. And quite frankly, teams haven't overpaid for pitching like that in a long, long time. No team is that desperate unless you get the extra years of control. So the Royals keeping their rotation intact. There's a method behind the madness. They see this group as the lifeblood of their team. It's what is going to lead them back to the postseason. And a good Seth Lugo helps them do that. And the second half to last year, it doesn't cloud what Seth Lugo has done in his 2 years in Kansas City. I will say this. He doesn't have the luxury of starting slow in 2026. Last year, if Seth Lugo started slow, it was, okay, we're still talking about a guy that threw 210 innings, had a 3.00 ERA, was their true number 2 all season long. He's going to be fine. This year, if he's getting rocked the way that he was late in the second half of 2025, there are going to be some concerns of, did you give that contract extension without ever predicting this was possible? Was that a foolish and reckless contract? Those conversations will be had. He's just too intelligent of a pitcher, though, throws too many different pitches at a highly effective rate for him to bottom out. I don't see Seth Lugo ending his time in Kansas City where he's just unstartable. You can't even turn to him every fifth day. There will be regression naturally because Father Time is undefeated. And a guy like Seth Lugo is not going to have the same movement, the same spin on all 10 of these pitches when he's coming down to the final year of his career. It does matter what he is doing in July and August, though, because even if he does look good, I'm going to be hesitant to say, well, he's going to be good to go the rest of the year. Whatever he was dealing with last year, that's in the past. We're not going to concern ourselves with that because 2 years running, he has hit a wall in August and September. Now in 24, he picked things back up in September and nobody was really worried about it again. Last year, he didn't get the chance to because he was hurt at the end of the year, but he also was pitching very poorly up until that point. Really, ever since the All-Star break, he never regained his form. I still stand by they should not overwork him with the new bullpen they have, the depth they have there. There's no need to ask for 7 or 8 innings out of Seth Lugo on a cold night in April, even if he is dealing. You're hoping that the offense will give you a big enough cushion where you don't need to make that difficult decision of, do you send him back out there in a 2-1 game at 90 pitches, or do you just go to your bullpen? They have more depth now in the bullpen where it can be easier to do that. Because Seth Lugo pitching well in the first 3 months of the season is good and helps this team. It is not as important as Seth Lugo just even being average at the tail end of the season. He was well below average the last 2 years. And I have to wonder if it was fatigue. I know he pushed back on it at Royals Rally. I would be concerned with the fatigue part of it. 35, 36-year-old pitchers are just not meant in today's game to throw 210 innings. I'm fine with 150 from Seth Lugo this year as long as it's an effective 150. So are you concerned with Seth Lugo regressing a little bit? I'm not sure we're going to get our answer in April and May because he's been a really good pitcher in the first half of the season. We'll likely know that answer around the All-Star break and what his inning workload is at that point. Do you believe Seth Lugo is going to be fine in 2026, or do you see him having that same regression in the second half? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, we do have to wrap up our show with some sad news that happened over the weekend. Former Royal Terrance Gore passed away at the age of 34. We'll pay our respects next on Locked On Royals. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. We are wrapping up this edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network out there. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. And if you're looking for the best way to follow me, you can do so on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. Well, the devastating news that happened over the weekend was that former Royal Terrance Gore had passed away at the age of 34. I had seen it on Saturday morning, and none of the major reporters out there had said anything on it. In fact, it was the Storm Chasers president and VP of baseball operations, I want to say it was. Maybe it was president and just baseball operations department had put out a post that Terrance Gore had passed away. So I knew that there was some legitimacy to this because you have somebody that is running the Storm Chasers and would have had a very good relationship with Terrance Gore. But sadly, at the age of 34, he had passed away. Annie Rogers had done a good article interviewing Dayton Moore, and Dayton Moore had actually gone on to say about Terrance Gore, quote, "There have been very few players who can take over a baseball game," and that's exactly what he did. He became a fan favorite. He was beloved by his teammates, and he was just fearless and impactful on the bases, but also on the field. And that's something you had heard about Terrance Gore from everybody in the Royals organization. Everybody that I had talked to said he was such a bright light, such a good person to talk to interview, a great teammate. And we say that a lot about players. They can be great with fans. They can be great with teammates. I'm not sure that everybody embodies that. I'm not sure that everybody really can become that perfect teammate, that perfect ambassador to the fan base and just be this fan favorite. And Cubs fans have an attachment to Terrance Gore. Braves fans do. He's got that crazy stat of more World Series than RBIs. I mean, 3 World Series championships with the Royals, and then it would have been the Braves, and I'm blanking on somebody else. I'm not sure it was the Dodgers because he was not on that Cubs team in 2016. He still would have been with the Royals, but 3 World Series rings. There's not many players that can say they've done that, and it wasn't that he was this long reliever that never got in the game. As Dayton Moore had brought up, he was a difference maker. And I'll never forget that in that 2014 season, as Gerard Dyson was the fan favorite of that team, and he was this electric base stealer, there was this rumblings, or there were rumblings, if you will, in the minor leagues of this guy who was arguably faster than Gerard Dyson. And as September rolled around, the Royals made that decision to put Terrance Gore on the roster and see what he was capable of. And though Dyson was as automatic as it got, you saw Terrance Gore come into this game, a small 5'6" guy, maybe 160 pounds, and to this day, the fastest player I've seen steal a base. I know you've got guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Corbin Carroll who were just blindingly quick from home to first. I just recall being there in person for the first time, watching Terrance Gore steal second base. And he was so fast that, cross baseball, sliding in head first is just what a lot of the quick base stealers did. They could do the swim move. It was just what they were taught. Terrance Gore never slid in head first. He was so quick that he almost could just get to second base standing up. And you try to pitch out on him, he was already standing on the bag. He was that quick. And truly a game changer. You can only hope for that every once in a while, that you get a base stealer that's as automatic as that, is able to read the pitcher, is able to get a good jump, is able to slide correctly, not overslide. And to not have the offensive skill set that Dyson had, or even the defensive skill set that Dyson had, he brought that same element on the bases, and it embodied what the Royals were. This scrappy, quick, base-stealing team that was going to try to get a run any way possible. And he was on the roster for one reason and one reason only. It was to steal bases. And he did that so incredibly. He was so effective at it. And when he would come out of the dugout, you just knew that he was going to be on second base. And there's few guys that I've watched in my lifetime. I mean, we've seen with Bobby that it's not automatic. He gets thrown out quite a bit for as fast as he is. There were few guys that would emerge from the dugout and you went, okay, well, he'll be in scoring position. Because it's one thing to be fast. It's another thing to be fast and an electric base stealer. When you've got that high IQ as a base stealer, to know when to go, to know how to pick up the slide step, to know when they're pitching out, and also to correctly slide in at second base. That was what I always thought was so impressive about him too. Sliding in feet first, he rarely was going to overslide the bag. Where we see guys sliding in head first all the time, they overslide the bag. But for Gore, he was on a lot of those playoff teams for a reason. Teams would roster him just because he was that cheat code. And he was so good at what he did. And to have those World Series championships, it shows that for good people, good things can happen to him. He made his way through the minor league level. He grinded through it, not saying other people haven't, but was a good teammate, was good to fans, became a fan favorite, a great base stealer, and has all of those trophies and continued to make a career out of it, doing one thing exceptionally well. We talk about 5-tool players all the time and how they have to be great at other things. There are few guys in this sport that can be on a roster for just doing one thing incredibly well. And yeah, we hear about fourth outfielders all the time. They're great defensively. You keep them on the roster for that reason, even if they hit under 200. Or this guy is so good at the plate, he can't do anything else. And those guys get everyday jobs because they can be DHs. You go across baseball now, there likely won't be any guys that resemble what Terrance Gore really was, because I'm not sure there's as great of a base stealer as he was. And Chandler Simpson comes to mind of the Rays, blindingly quick. He is the fastest guy in the sport right now, and maybe might go down as one of the fastest guys out there. But he also is an everyday player, or at bare minimum, that fourth outfielder for the Rays. Terrance Gore wasn't that. Terrance Gore held one of those spots on the roster to come in a tight game in the 8th or 9th inning and change the game. And that's what made him so special. And it's incredibly sad news that he passed away far too young at the age of 34. He had children, he had a wife, just heartbreaking news. It's something that eerily reminds you of when Yordano Ventura passed away. I want to say it was a Saturday or a Sunday morning where you just woke up to the news and you didn't believe it was real. Now, Ventura was still on Kansas City's team. It had been a couple of years since Terrance Gore was on the Royals, but it shocks you. It takes you back because that just shouldn't happen for a guy as young as he was. But he made such an impact on the sport, such an impact on the Royals for the short time that he was on the team, and will forever be remembered. A guy that was a fan favorite, was a game changer, as Dayton Moore said, and just, it breaks your heart. It breaks my heart for me to talk about it. You know that if you've listened to this podcast long enough, we usually don't go over stuff like this, but it's too big of news to not go over. I'd be doing a disservice if I wasn't talking about Terrance Gore in today's episode. Just such sad news, and got to pray for his family and them moving forward because, that definitely ruined my weekend. And there was a lot going on this weekend for me work-wise, and I just never got to speak to Terrance Gore personally, but just have always heard fantastic things about him, and he was raved about within the Royals organization. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Again, thank you for making this episode your first listen of the day. Tomorrow, we're going to continue to preview pitchers and catchers reporting here in a couple of days. And if you do want to sign up for the Everydayer Club, just scroll down below and click on that URL link, and they're going to be able to take you from there. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.